You know about Richard Herb testifying on Capitol Hill. You know what he's testifying about. It's essentially is a beat up on Richard Herb congressional session. You have the Republicans saying, hey, forget that he's senile. You still should indict him. And then you got Democrats saying, you exonerated him, huh? You exonerated him, huh? And why are you saying all of this stuff? Right? Now, with that said, there was somebody who was vigorously going after Richard, and you would think it's be a corporate Democrat, but no. We traveled to the Progressive Caucus and pick, I believe she's the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal. She does such a good job that she's actually brought on Wolf Blitzer to talk about how such of a good job she did. So let's cover that. Let's first play the exchange between her, and she thought she was winning here.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden. For every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of the word that you used, exoneration. That is not a word that
I'm going to continue with my questions. I'm going to continue with my questions. I know that the term
I ultimately reached.
I know that
whether
the term
sufficient evidence existed such that the likely outcome
you exonerated
a conviction.
I know that the term.
Now, why would now he started to give his answer. Right. And because when he got to the part where he's talking about, wait, I need to correct what you're saying here, she was quiet and letting him talk up until the part when she said, I never said he's exonerated. So you have the person who wrote the report. So there's no more interpretation needed about this report. Oh, it reset. I'll go back to it. There's no interpretation needed about this report. You don't need to read the report because this is what was going on about the report. You would go to Fox News and you say, it says that he's not exonerated. You would go to CNN and MSNBC and they would say, oh, it says here that he's exonerated. So you had two sides able to read something and come to two different conclusions. But now you have the actual person in front of you where you can ask him, are you saying he's exonerated or not? That's not what she said. She says, you are telling me in this report he's exonerated. That's what you mean, sir. Yeah, you wrote it, but this is what you mean. So this is the fight she has here.
So this lengthy, expensive, and independent investigation resulted in a complete exoneration of President Joe Biden. For every document you discussed in your report, you found insufficient evidence that the president violated any laws about possession or retention of classified materials. The primary law that you analyzed for potential prosecution was part of the Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793E, which criminalizes willful retention or disclosure of national defense information. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, that is one statute that we analyzed. I need to go back and make sure that I take note of the word that you used, exoneration. That is not a word that
I'm going to continue with my questions. I'm going to continue with my questions.
You know how yellow and cowardly you got to be to talk over that particular part about exoneration? Now, it's a tell to me that's clearly because she knows that was a fib. She slipped in the fib and you're not going to point out her fib. So she'll just talk over you.
My questions. I know that the term
I ultimately reached.
I know that
whether
the term
sufficient evidence existed such that the likely outcome
you exonerated
a conviction.
I know that the term willful retention has a
the guy
my time.
who wrote the report is right
here. So this lengthy, expensive, and
the guy who wrote the report is right there, and you're telling him what he meant by what he wrote. She was so proud of this, she tweeted it herself, the longer version of it, saying the main story of the special counsel report is, despite Republican lies and misinformation, there was not evidence that President Biden willfully retained any classified material That is the bottom line outcome of this investigation. That's not at all what he says. So let's listen to Pramila Jayapal, because Pramila Jayapal, along with AOC, along with Bernie Sanders, they appear to be Joe Biden's most staunchest, most loudest surrogates this cycle. The progressives are that. Just astonishing. Let's listen to this 4-minute interview that's just terrible.
Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is joining us now live. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. By using that word, an explosive word, exonerate, did you actually wind up helping make Republicans point that President Biden did willfully retain classified documents?
Wolf, it's always good to be with you. And no, look, the common definition of exonerate is to absolve of any blame. And that is exactly what the 345-page report.
There she goes again, saying that it says that, and it does not.
That Robert Hur did show that he had insufficient evidence to prosecute Joe Biden on any of the charges that he was investigating. And so he was not able to show that Joe Biden willfully retained classified documents.
Think about what you have to be a progressive. You have to have the ability to talk about progressive things like Palestine. But in order, the deal you have made to be able to talk about Palestine is you have to make a deal on other CIA, NATO, U.S. empire talking points. That's the deal. So look how shameless, you know how shameless you got to be kowtowing to Joe Biden at this point. This is the relationship. This is the dynamic of the relationship for progressives with the Democrats and the president. It's criticize him a little bit, and then they go over here and kowtow and bow to him. They need to make sure, am I saying enough establishment shit? Am I saying enough NATO talking points to be okay with the other shit that I said? I know I pissed you off with the Palestinian shit, but I'm here now to suck off the fucking U.S. empire to prove that I'm still a lapdog for you. That's essentially what Pramila Jayapal is doing here.
And that he was, that he was guilty. So he was arguing it was a distinction without a difference, in my opinion. Maybe he was auditioning for to be Trump's attorney general. But you can't have a 345-page report that literally lays out charge after charge that you found insufficient evidence to be able to move forward with, and then say that somehow that person is not absolved of blame. And that is what the word exonerate means in common language. Now, obviously he was trying to use a legal term of
oh, you mean the legal guy was trying to use a legal term in a legal proceeding? That's weird. This looks so like pitiful. One, that she's throwing herself on the sword, throwing herself in the fire, fighting like a gladiator against Richard Hur for Joe Biden, who don't even fucking like you, and you're barely hanging on a string here because of your stance on Palestinians.
Of exoneration, but you can look it up in Merriam-Webster dictionary. Exonerate is actually what happened in this report.
Hur said today that he, quote, did not sanitize, I'm quoting him now, he did not sanitize my explanation, nor did I disparage the president unfairly. How do you respond to that?
I think he was trying to have it all ways. He was trying to say that he was fair, but I understand that he, felt that he had to show his work. He kept saying that. But there are lots of ways to show your work without prejudicing the report and the person that is in the report. And that's why typically these documents are not made public. They are usually classified. But he knew, he's a very smart guy, he knew this one was going to be made public. And I think there are plenty of ways he could have characterized his belief that a jury would take a number of factors into consideration without prejudicing and drawing conclusions that I feel were very inappropriate about President Joe Biden.
On another important topic, I want to question you on, very important. You've announced you won't support this latest effort to try to force a vote on an aid package for Ukraine and Taiwan because it also includes aid for Israel. Would you support this aid if it includes conditions on that military aid to Israel?
Now, a progressive would say, after seeing the genocide, would say, no, there's no conditions because the government is a genocidal government. And then who's going to believe they're going to follow it? That's what she should say. Let's listen to what she says, though.
I think that is a discussion that is very worth having. And I would just say that this whole situation that we're in is because Republicans have refused to support aid to Ukraine. Speaker Johnson has the responsibility to put the Senate-passed bill on the floor. He has not done that because of the Ukraine aid. I will tell you, Wolf, that I would support a discharge petition today if it included only the Ukraine aid. Wow. If it included Taiwan aid, I would be fine. Obviously, if it
so she thinks she's on some sort of moral high ground because she only wants to send millions of dollars to the Nazis in Ukraine, not the Nazis in Israel. So she's saying, I'm better than you because I don't want to send money to the Nazis in Israel, but I sure as hell want to send money to the Nazis in Ukraine. And she thinks she has the moral high ground. This is literally encapsulates the progressive Democrats and progressives in general, social Democrats.
Included the humanitarian aid for Gaza and for other places, that would also be very good. But I think you would see a completely united Democratic caucus on the issue of aid for Ukraine. And, that is something that we should consider. But certainly, if we start looking at conditions, real conditions on aid to Israel, I would support defensive aid, Iron Dome aid for Israel today, because I think that's important.
So she still would support the aid. How are Palestinians, how are they supposed to look at progressives as an ally? An ally that supplies the weapons and the bullets, and an ally that wants to, not haven't yet, that wants to supply humanitarian aid. How is a Palestinian supposed to read a progressive Democrat, a social Democrat, aka a liberal? How are they supposed to read them as an ally? It's very schizophrenic. Let's let her finish out. It's a few more seconds.
It's important to protect Israelis. But what I won't do is continue to support United States offensive military aid going in to kill people in Gaza when Benjamin Netanyahu has continued to say that he is completely opposed to a two-state solution. He has continued to encourage the expansion of settlements in the West Bank, and he's continued to block humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza, even though we are providing him with that offensive military aid. I think that is absolutely untenable.
Representative Pramila.
You see the position she has to make. She has to come on and kowtow to a establishment talking point about Richard Hur in the report, and then in the same segment pivot to being against an establishment, pseudo against, because again, if it has conditions, she'll be down for it.